This audiobook marks the end of the pattern of forcing. You are not stuck. You are not broken. And you are not failing at manifestation. You are forcing. Forcing outcomes. Forcing clarity. Forcing timing. Forcing yourself into a future that only arrives when you stop chasing it. Now it's time to create a new pattern of flow. Because the truth is simple and confronting. Nothing flows toward a tense mind. Nothing aligns with urgency. Nothing arrives through pressure. Manifestation is not activated by effort. It is activated by frequency. And the frequency that creates everything you desire is calm, grounded, and internally settled. In the next few hours, you will be guided slowly and deliberately out of struggle consciousness and into flow consciousness. Not through visualization, not through affirmation overload, but through alignment. By the end of this audiobook, you will no longer ask, "Why isn't it working?" You will know deeply and peacefully that it already is. Welcome to a chapter a day. Let's enjoy the end of forcing, the beginning of flow. Chapter 1. Stop forcing the outcome. Forcing is subtle. Forcing often feels responsible. Forcing feels like effort, like commitment, like I'm doing something right. But forcing is not power. Forcing is fear dressed up as discipline. Forcing is the unconscious belief that this moment is not enough. And the moment you believe now is insufficient, you step out of alignment. That's the key. Nothing arrives while you argue with now. Nothing flows toward a mind that is tense with expectation. Nothing responds to pressure the way it responds to permission. Shift your consciousness. Right now, notice how often your mind is leaning forward, reaching, anticipating, gripping the future. That leaning is forcing, and forcing always creates resistance. The tighter you grip, the further it feels. This is not a metaphor. This is a law of internal alignment. When you force an outcome, you communicate to your nervous system that something is wrong. When your nervous system feels something is wrong, it activates survival. And survival consciousness cannot manifest ease, clarity, or flow. It can only manifest more problems to solve. That's why so many people say, "I'm doing everything right, but nothing is working." They are doing the actions, but from the wrong state. It's not about effort. It's about alignment. Embody the state you desire. Let's look at relationships. Have you noticed that love often appears when you stop searching for it? Not when you give up, but when you relax. When you stop checking your phone. When you stop rehearsing conversations. When you stop trying to control how you are perceived. The moment you release the emotional demand, something shifts. You become grounded, present, available, and suddenly connection appears. The tighter you grip, the further it feels. Money works the same way. When money is chased with fear, it runs. When it is demanded with urgency, it resists. But when your inner state stabilizes, when you act from calm, clarity, and trust, opportunities begin to appear. Not because you forced them, but because you stopped blocking them. Shift your consciousness. This chapter is not telling you to stop acting. It is telling you to stop straining. There is a difference. Aligned action feels clean. Forcing feels heavy. Aligned action is focused. Forcing is frantic. Aligned action comes from inner sufficiency. Forcing comes from the belief, "I don't have enough yet." That belief is the block. That's the key. Clarity follows the same rule. Have you ever noticed that clarity rarely comes when you're obsessively thinking? It comes in the shower, on a walk, right before sleep. Why? Because the mind stopped forcing an answer. The system relaxed, and clarity could enter. Nothing arrives while you argue with now. When you argue with now, you say, "This moment should be different." And life responds, "Then you're not ready for what's next." This is not punishment. It's coherence. Reality mirrors your internal state with precision. So if you want a future that feels calm, abundant, and aligned, you must stop approaching it with tension. Embody the state you desire. Right now, practice this. Notice any area of your life where you feel tight, where you are checking progress, measuring time, comparing yourself to others. That tightness is forcing, and the instruction is simple, but not easy. Soften, breathe deeper, slow down your movements, relax your jaw, drop your shoulders. This is not spiritual fluff. This is nervous system regulation. A regulated system allows flow. A dysregulated system blocks it. It's not about wanting less. It's about needing less emotionally. That's the discipline. The tighter you grip, the further it feels. Say it again internally. Let it sink in. Every time you feel yourself pushing, remind yourself, I don't need to force this. I don't need to solve this right now. I allow this to unfold. That's not passivity. That's intelligence. When you stop forcing, you don't lose momentum. You regain precision. Your actions become fewer, but more effective. Your words become calmer, but more impactful. Your presence becomes grounded, and presence is persuasive. Shift your consciousness. This chapter is the foundation of everything that follows. Because you cannot learn flow while still gripping control. You cannot allow while still arguing with the moment. The end of forcing is the beginning of power. And now that you've seen how forcing quietly sabotages alignment, it's time to understand the deeper state that keeps you trapped in effort. You've stopped forcing the outcome. Now let's expose the mindset that creates struggle in the first place. Chapter 2. Understand struggle consciousness. Struggle consciousness is not effort. It only looks like effort. Struggle consciousness is the belief that alignment must be earned, that peace comes after achievement, that ease comes after exhaustion, that flow is a reward for suffering. That belief is false. And as long as you believe it, you will stay busy, but blocked. That's the key. Struggle consciousness says, I'll relax when this works. Alignment says, it works when I relax. Those two states can never coexist. Shift your consciousness. Struggle consciousness feels urgent. It feels like time is running out, like you're behind, like everyone else got the memo except you. And so you push. You consume more content. You try harder. You overanalyze every decision. But urgency is not guidance. Urgency is a signal. Struggle is not proof of effort. It is proof of resistance. Let that land. When you are aligned, action feels clean. When you are in struggle, action feels heavy. Struggle consciousness always says, more. More thinking. More fixing. More doing. But alignment often asks for less. Less pressure. Less self-surveillance. Less emotional demand. Embody the state you desire. Look at comparison. Comparison is not motivation. It is misalignment. When you compare, you are subconsciously saying, where I am is not enough. And the moment you decide that, your nervous system tightens. Your breath shortens. Your perception narrows. You move out of flow and into force. Struggle is not proof of effort. It is proof of resistance. People in struggle consciousness often say, I just need to figure it out. But what they really mean is, I don't feel safe not knowing. That's not a thinking problem. That's a regulation problem. Alignment does not require certainty. It requires trust. Shift your consciousness. Impatience works the same way. Impatience is not ambition. It is disbelief in timing. It says, if it doesn't happen now, something is wrong. And again, your system responds with stress. Stress narrows perception. Narrow perception blocks opportunity. That's why impatience delays the very thing it's trying to accelerate. Struggle is not proof of effort. It is proof of resistance. Think about people you admire who seem to move effortlessly. They are not trying harder than you. They are not thinking more than you. They are not gripping the outcome emotionally. They expect ease. Expectation is a frequency. When you expect struggle, you create friction. When you expect flow, you notice openings. That's the key. Struggle consciousness trains you to believe that rest is irresponsible, that pausing is lazy, that ease is suspicious. But flow requires space. Just like clarity needed you to stop thinking in Chapter 1, alignment now needs you to stop proving. It's not about effort. It's about permission. Permission to move slower. Permission to not have answers yet. Permission to be where you are without self-attack. Embody the state you desire. Here is a practical shift. The next time you feel urgency, do not act immediately. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I slow down? That answer reveals the resistance. You do not dissolve struggle by overpowering it. You dissolve it by seeing it. Awareness collapses unconscious patterns. Struggle consciousness survives on unconsciousness. Alignment thrives on awareness. Shift your consciousness. Notice how struggle often feels dramatic, heavy, emotionally loud. Flow feels quiet, almost boring at first. That's why many people abandon alignment. They mistake calm for stagnation. But calm is stability, and stability is magnetic. Struggle is not proof of effort. It is proof of resistance. Repeat it until your body understands it. You are not here to earn worth. You are not here to hustle for alignment. You are here to allow. And allowance begins when you stop fighting your current state. You've now seen the mental loop that keeps people stuck in effort. You understand that urgency, comparison, and impatience are not instructions. They are alarms. You don't follow alarms. You address them. You've stepped out of struggle consciousness. Now it's time to experience what replaces it. You've understood struggle. Now, let's enter the state that dissolves it entirely. Chapter 3. Flow is a state, not a strategy. Flow is not something you figure out. Flow is something you allow. The moment you try to strategize flow, you leave it. The moment you try to engineer ease, you create effort. And effort is the opposite of flow. That's the key. Flow is not a method. It is not a routine. It is not something you add to your calendar. Flow is an internal permission slip. Shift your consciousness. Most people treat flow like a reward. They say, once this works, I'll relax. But flow says, relax first, then it works. That reversal is everything. When you soften inside, life responds outside. Let's make this real. Think about moments in your life when things worked without strain, when you weren't trying to impress, when you weren't monitoring results, when you weren't emotionally attached to the outcome. Maybe it was a conversation that flowed effortlessly, an idea that arrived out of nowhere, a solution that appeared while you weren't looking. That was flow. You didn't cause it. You didn't plan it. You allowed it. Embody the state you desire. Flow already exists in your life. You just don't recognize it as power because it feels ordinary. You laugh easily with certain people. You focus naturally on certain tasks. You feel calm in certain environments. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. Flow is simply the absence of internal resistance. When you stop bracing, you enter it. When you stop proving, you access it. When you stop controlling, you feel it. When you soften inside, life responds outside. Most people leave flow the moment they notice it. They say, how do I keep this? And the question itself collapses it. Because flow does not respond to possession. It responds to openness. That's the key. Flow does not ask you to do more. It asks you to interfere less. Notice how often you interrupt ease with thought. You analyze. You doubt. You self-monitor. That monitoring is tension. Flow happens when attention is present, but the ego is quiet. Shift your consciousness. This chapter is not asking you to stop planning. It's asking you to stop over-identifying with outcomes. Planning from calm feels light. Planning from fear feels heavy. Same action, different state. And the state determines the result. It's not about trying to be in flow all the time. That's another form of forcing. It's about noticing when you leave it. Notice the tightening, the rush, the need to fix. Those are exit signs, and the re-entry point is always the same. Soften, slow your breath, widen your attention, release the demand. When you soften inside, life responds outside. Say it again. Let your body learn it. Flow is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It feels stable, grounded, quietly effective. That's why people addicted to struggle overlook it. Struggle feels important. Flow feels simple. But simplicity is power. Embody the state you desire. Here is a practice. Before acting, ask yourself, am I doing this to control an outcome or to express alignment? If it's control, pause. If it's alignment, proceed. This one question will change your behavior. Because flow-guided action never feels rushed. It feels timely. And timing is intelligence. When you soften inside, life responds outside. Flow is not something you enter once and stay in forever. It is something you return to again and again. Each return builds trust. Each return deepens ease. And ease is not laziness. Ease is coherence. You now understand that flow is not a strategy to master. It is a state to embody. You stop chasing it. You stop trying to hold it. You stop asking it to perform. And when you do, it stays. You've released struggle. You've allowed flow. Now there is one more layer that keeps people forcing without realizing it. It's not effort. It's obsession with when. You've entered flow. Now it's time to let go of the clock. Chapter 4. Release the need to control timing. The fastest way to leave flow is to ask, when? When will it happen? When will it change? When will I finally see results? That question feels innocent, responsible, logical, but underneath it is tension. That's the key. The obsession with timing is the mind's attempt to regain control after surrender. It's fear trying to reinsert itself into alignment. And the moment you demand timing, you collapse flow. Shift your consciousness. Timing is not managed by force. Timing is not persuaded by impatience. Timing is not accelerated by pressure. Timing obeys trust, not demand. Let that settle. Most people don't realize that when is often the last attachment to struggle consciousness. They stop forcing actions. They soften emotionally. But they still watch the clock. They say, I'm allowing, but why isn't it here yet? That yet is resistance. Nothing arrives while you argue with now. When you fixate on timing, you subtly reject the present moment. You treat now as a waiting room instead of a destination. And life responds accordingly. It keeps you waiting. That's not punishment. That's alignment feedback. Timing obeys trust, not demand. Look at real life. Think of something that finally worked after you stopped obsessing over it. A job you stopped chasing. A relationship you released emotionally. An idea you let rest. Often, success didn't arrive because you waited longer. It arrived because you stopped needing it to arrive. The moment expectation dissolved, flow resumed. Embody the state you desire. Delayed success is rarely delayed because you're not ready. It's delayed because you're watching too closely. Attention mixed with tension becomes interference. You don't pull a seed out of the ground to check if it's growing. You water it. You trust the process. You allow time to do its work. And manifestation works the same way. Shift your consciousness. Timing is intelligent. Far more intelligent than your fear. Your mind sees fragments. Timing sees the whole pattern. It aligns people, resources, emotional readiness, and circumstance. You cannot micromanage that from anxiety. That's the discipline. It's not about patience. It's about trust. Patience still implies waiting. Trust implies living. When you trust timing, you don't pause your life until results appear. You continue to move, enjoy, create, and engage. And paradoxically, that's when results accelerate. Timing obeys trust, not demand. Notice how demanding timing feels in the body. Tight chest, restless energy, Mental loops. That's not intuition. That's insecurity. Intuition feels calm, grounded, certain without urgency. Learn the difference. Embody the state you desire. Here is a practical instruction. Anytime you catch yourself asking, when, replace it with, what does alignment look like right now? That question brings you back to power. Because alignment is always available now. Timing is not your job. State is. Your only responsibility is coherence. When your inner state matches ease, the outer sequence reorganizes. That's the key. Many people delay joy until manifestation arrives. They say, I'll relax when it happens. But relaxation is the signal that allows it to happen. You don't wait for evidence to trust timing. You trust timing, and evidence follows. Timing obeys trust, not demand. Say it again. Let your nervous system learn it. This chapter is about releasing the last illusion of control. You don't manage the unfolding. You align with it. And alignment always feels lighter than expectation. You've now loosened your grip on when. You're no longer watching the clock. You're present. And presence unlocks the next layer of flow. Because once timing is released, something deeper becomes possible. Not emotional highs. Not forced positivity. But stability. You've let go of forcing. You've released struggle. You've entered flow. You've trusted timing. Now it's time to master the state that makes alignment sustainable. Chapter 5. Emotional neutrality is power. Most people think manifestation responds to excitement. High emotion. Big belief. Constant positivity. That idea is incomplete. Excitement spikes energy, but it also destabilizes it. Positivity helps, but it often hides resistance underneath. Neutrality is different. Neutrality is power. That's the key. Emotional neutrality is not indifference. It is not giving up. It is not numbness. Emotional neutrality is stability. And stability is what reality responds to most consistently. Calm is magnetic. Shift your consciousness. When you are emotionally neutral, you are no longer swinging between hope and disappointment. You are no longer reacting to evidence. You are no longer outsourcing your state to outcomes. You are centered, and a centered state is highly persuasive to reality. Think about this. People who are emotionally reactive feel busy inside. Up when things look good, down when things slow. Their energy is loud, but inconsistent. Reality doesn't respond well to inconsistency. Reality responds to coherence. Calm is magnetic. Look at the people in your life who seem to get results effortlessly. They are not overly emotional about outcomes. They are not desperate. They are not chasing validation. They expect things to work out. Expectation without emotional charge is neutrality. That's alignment. Embody the state you desire. Emotional neutrality is the nervous system saying, I am safe whether this happens now or later. And safety is a powerful signal. When your system feels safe, perception opens. When perception opens, you notice opportunities. When you notice opportunities, manifestation accelerates. This is not mystical. This is biological. A regulated nervous system is creative. A dysregulated one is reactive. Calm is magnetic. Many people resist neutrality because it feels unfamiliar. They say, if I'm not excited, will it still work? Yes. More reliably. Excitement comes and goes. Calm remains. Neutrality doesn't block desire. It removes desperation from it. That's the discipline. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about not feeding emotion unnecessarily. Notice how often you mentally rehearse outcomes. Celebrate too early. Catastrophize too fast. Both are instability. Neutrality stays present. Shift your consciousness. Here is the truth most people miss. Manifestation does not respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. Consistency of state. Consistency of expectation. Consistency of inner calm. That's why emotional neutrality accelerates results. You stop interrupting the process with mood swings. Calm is magnetic. Here's a real-world example. Someone applies for opportunities with desperation. They refresh their email constantly. They emotionally collapse at delays. Another person applies, then goes on with their life. They trust follow-up. They don't emotionally cling. Who do you think receives better responses? Not because the universe plays favorites, but because calm communicates confidence. Confidence without arrogance. Ease without detachment. That's neutrality. Embody the state you desire. Neutrality also protects you. When outcomes fluctuate, you don't. When timing shifts, you don't panic. When progress feels slow, you stay grounded. And that groundedness keeps you aligned long enough for results to land. Calm is magnetic. Here is a practice to embody this chapter. The next time you feel emotionally charged, positive or negative, pause. Name the sensation. Slow your breathing. Return to center. Say internally, I don't need to react to this. Reaction is not power. Regulation is. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. When you act from neutrality, your actions are clean. They are not fueled by fear or fantasy. They are informed by clarity. Shift your consciousness. Neutrality is the state where forcing cannot survive, where struggle has nothing to hook into, where timing no longer provokes anxiety. That's why neutrality feels spacious. And in that space, life reorganizes. Calm is magnetic. Repeat it until your body trusts it. You are not here to stay high. You are not here to stay positive. You are here to stay aligned. And alignment feels calm. You've now learned to stabilize your inner world. You've moved beyond forcing, struggle, urgency, and emotional spikes. But there is still one subtle block left. Resistance to now. You've regulated emotion. Now it's time to accept the present fully. Because acceptance is the doorway to the next level of flow. Chapter 6. Allow the present to be enough. The deepest block to flow is not fear. It is not doubt. It is not lack of knowledge. It is resistance to now. The moment you decide the present should be different, your system tightens. Your attention splits. Your energy leaks into imagination instead of embodiment. That's the key. Flow cannot coexist with rejection of the moment you are in. Shift your consciousness. Most resistance is quiet. It sounds like, this isn't it yet. I'll feel better once something changes. This is temporary. Those thoughts feel harmless. But they train your system to believe that now is a problem. And when now is a problem, alignment is postponed. When now is enough, next arrives. Let that settle. Acceptance is not agreement. It is not approval. It is not settling. Acceptance is honesty without tension. It says, this is what is happening, and I am not fighting it. And the moment the fight stops, energy returns. Embody the state you desire. Think about times when change happened unexpectedly. Often it wasn't after you pushed harder. It was after you surrendered emotionally. A relationship shifted once you stopped trying to fix it. Clarity appeared once you stopped demanding it. Opportunities arose once you stopped obsessing. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped resisting what was. Resistance freezes movement. Acceptance restores it. That's the paradox. When now is enough, next arrives. Many people fear acceptance because they think it will lock them in place. The opposite is true. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. That's not philosophy. That's observation. Shift your consciousness. Notice how your body responds when you say internally, this moment is allowed. Your breath deepens. Your shoulders drop. Your perception widens. That widening is flow. Flow requires space. Resistance compresses. Calm is magnetic because calm is acceptance embodied. When you allow now to be enough, you send a powerful signal. I am not in survival. And when survival turns off, creation turns on. That's the key. This chapter is not asking you to love your circumstances. It's asking you to stop arguing with them. Arguing drains energy. Allowance restores it. Embody the state you desire. Here is a practical reframe. Anytime you feel frustration, ask yourself, what am I refusing to accept right now? It might be pace. It might be uncertainty. It might be emotion. Name it. Allow it. Stay present. You don't fix resistance by fixing life. You fix resistance by softening inside life. When now is enough, next arrives. Stories repeat this lesson again and again. People who finally relax into their situation often receive unexpected help. Not because they earned it, but because they became available to see it. Availability is alignment. Resistance blinds. Acceptance reveals. Shift your consciousness. Acceptance does not make you passive. It makes you accurate. From acceptance, action becomes precise. You no longer act to escape the moment. You act to express alignment. That's a completely different frequency. And reality responds to frequency, not force. When now is enough, next arrives. Repeat it until it feels true. This chapter is the emotional doorway into sustained flow. Because once you stop fighting the present, you stop identifying as someone who is behind. And that identity, the one who is behind, is the next thing to release. You've allowed the present. Now it's time to let go of the story you've been telling about yourself within it. Chapter 7. Detach from the identity of struggle. There is a difference between experiencing struggle and being someone who struggles. Most people don't notice when effort becomes identity. But the moment it does, struggle stops being temporary and becomes familiar. That's the key. Many people unconsciously see themselves as the one who tries, the responsible one, the hard worker, the one who doesn't give up. On the surface, this looks admirable. Underneath, it hides attachment. Attachment to effort. Attachment to struggle. Attachment to proving worth through trying. Shift your consciousness. When effort becomes identity, ease feels unsafe. Flow feels suspicious. Receiving feels undeserved. And so even when alignment appears, the ego reintroduces strain. Not because it wants pain, but because it wants familiarity. You are not here to prove, only to receive. Say it again. Struggle identity often sounds like this. I've always had to work hard for everything. Nothing comes easily to me. I can't just relax. These are not facts. They are self-concepts. And self-concepts shape behavior more than beliefs do. Embody the state you desire. Effort becomes ego reinforcement when you use it to feel valuable. When trying becomes how you confirm you are doing enough. When struggle becomes proof that you care. But struggle is not proof of commitment. Presence is. Flow does not erase discipline. It erases self-punishment. That's the discipline most people miss. You are not here to prove, only to receive. Notice how often you measure yourself by effort instead of alignment. Did I try hard enough? Did I push enough? Did I do more than yesterday? Those questions keep you in struggle identity. Aligned questions sound different. Was I present? Was I regulated? Was I honest with myself? Shift your consciousness. This chapter asks you to release the identity that says, if I'm not trying, I'm failing. That identity creates constant pressure, and pressure blocks reception. Receiving requires openness. Openness requires safety. Safety requires letting go of proving. You are not here to prove, only to receive. Here is a real-world example. Two people want the same outcome. One says, I'll do whatever it takes. The other says, I'll stay aligned and act when it feels right. The first burns out. The second stays consistent. Consistency beats intensity. And consistency only happens when effort is not tied to self-worth. Embody the state you desire. Detaching from struggle identity does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering unnecessarily. You still show up. You still take action. But you no longer use hardship as evidence of value. That shift alone frees enormous energy. Shift your consciousness. Ask yourself this honestly. Who would I be if things were easier? How would I move if I didn't need to struggle to feel valid? Let those questions dissolve the old identity. You don't need to replace it with a new label. You simply drop the old one. Struggle was a phase, not a personality. You are not here to prove, only to receive. Repeat it until your body stops bracing. This chapter is about permission. Permission to succeed without suffering. Permission to rest without guilt. Permission to receive without justification. And when you release the identity of struggle, a new identity naturally emerges. Not one you force, one you align with. You no longer see yourself as the one who tries. You begin to see yourself as the one who expects ease. An expectation is powerful. You've released resistance to now. You've released attachment to struggle. Now it's time to align with the version of you who already lives in flow. Chapter 8. Align with the version of you that expects ease. The future self is not waiting for you. The future self is available to you, not as a destination, not as a reward, but as a frequency. That's the key. Most people imagine their future self as someone they become after success, after healing, after manifestation. But alignment works in reverse. You don't become that version later. You align with that version now. Shift your consciousness. The version of you that expects ease already exists. You have felt them before, in brief moments. Moments where you didn't doubt, didn't rush, didn't overthink. Moments where things felt obvious. Those moments weren't luck. They were alignment. Expectation shapes experience. Future self-alignment is not visualization. It's calibration. You gently ask, how would I move if I expected this to work out? How would I speak if I trusted timing? How would I decide if ease was normal? And then you act from that place. Not dramatically, not perfectly, subtly. Embody the state you desire. Ease-based identity changes behavior naturally. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing validation. You stop reacting emotionally to small delays. Not because you force calm, because calm is expected. Expectation shapes experience. This chapter is not about pretending. It's about remembering. You already know how to be grounded. You already know how to trust briefly. The work is to stay there longer. Shift your consciousness. Notice how people who expect ease handle obstacles. They don't personalize them. They don't dramatize them. They adjust and continue. They assume things resolve. That assumption is powerful, because reality responds to assumption more than intention. Embody the state you desire. Here is a simple mental rehearsal. Before entering a situation, quietly say, "This goes smoothly." Not with excitement, not with hope, with neutrality. And then notice how your body responds. Shoulders drop, breath slows, perception opens. That is future self-alignment in action. Expectation shapes experience. You are not trying to control outcomes. You are choosing a baseline, and baseline determines trajectory. When ease is your baseline, you don't spiral when things wobble. You course correct. That stability is magnetic. Shift your consciousness. This alignment does not require confidence. It requires permission. Permission to stop anticipating problems. Permission to stop bracing for disappointment. Permission to stop identifying with effort. You are not forcing positivity. You are releasing pessimism. Expectation shapes experience. This chapter trains you to borrow the nervous system of your aligned self. The one who doesn't rush. The one who doesn't grip. The one who expects support. And when you borrow that state consistently, it becomes familiar. Familiar becomes identity. Identity becomes behavior. Behavior becomes outcome. That's the sequence. Embody the state you desire. You don't need to visualize for hours. You don't need to repeat affirmations endlessly. You need to expect differently. Expectation shapes experience. You've now aligned with the future self who trusts ease. Next, you'll learn how to stop chasing life altogether and let it move toward you. Because once expectation shifts, pursuit becomes unnecessary. Chapter 9. Let life move toward you. Most people live in pursuit, chasing opportunities, people, results, and even clarity. The mind convinces you that movement equals progress. But chasing is resistance in disguise. Chasing is tension. Chasing is impatience pretending to be action. That's the key. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. Shift your consciousness. When you chase, you tighten. When you tighten, doors close. When doors close, the universe seems slow, unfair, or silent. But when you stop chasing, something remarkable happens. Ideas arrive. Opportunities appear. People reach out. Invitations flow. Not because you did less, but because you opened space for reception. Shift your consciousness. Think of everyday life. Have you ever noticed inspiration arriving while you were doing something unrelated? A solution came while showering. A connection appeared while walking. A clarity arrived while journaling. These are all demonstrations of life moving toward you. Not chasing. Not forcing. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. Chasing assumes lack. Receptivity assumes abundance. And alignment is drawn to abundance. Shift your consciousness. Most people feel compelled to hustle harder. The mind whispers, if I do more, it will come faster. But what actually accelerates manifestation is presence, space, and allowance. Repetition builds the nervous system. Notice it. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. Anchor this in your body. Here's how to practice. Stop. Breathe. Scan for opportunities appearing naturally. Observe invitations, synchronicities, and hints from your environment. Respond, don't hunt. Alignment is attracted to calm, receptive energy. Not frantic energy. Not anxious energy. Not needy energy. When you notice alignment instead of chasing it, momentum builds. Embody the state you desire. You might feel resistance. You might think, but what if I miss something? That is the ego wanting control. Release it. Trust the intelligence of timing. Trust the natural unfolding. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. Every small demonstration reinforces it. A client calls you after weeks of silence. An opportunity you were waiting for appears effortlessly. A creative idea surfaces when your mind was quiet. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations of alignment in action. Shift your consciousness. Notice how chasing contracts your field. Notice how receptivity expands it. Notice how this shift is effortless, yet powerful. This chapter is the apex of the previous lessons. You've released struggle. You've allowed the present. You've aligned with ease. You've trusted timing. You've detached from identity. Now, you simply notice life's response. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. This is the state that invites everything else. Ideas, opportunities, relationships, clarity. All arrive because you are no longer pushing against life. Shift your consciousness. Every time you try less and notice more, your nervous system learns. I am safe. I am capable. I am aligned. And alignment is magnetic. You do not chase alignment, you notice it. Say it again. Feel it in your body. Let it replace old patterns of pursuit. You've entered a new frequency. One where life comes to you, naturally, effortlessly, and reliably. Now, the final chapter will integrate all the lessons into a permanent practice. It will teach you how to embody alignment in every thought, word, and action, so that manifestation is no longer an event, but your natural state. Chapter 10. Live in flow as a daily practice. Flow is not a special event. It is not reserved for retreats, meditation sessions, or rare perfect moments. Flow is available now, every day, in every action. That's the key. Flow is not something you enter. It is something you stop leaving. Shift your consciousness. Most people think flow is fleeting. They treat it like a prize. When I get it, I'll hold it. When I feel it, I'll act. But flow is only fragile when you doubt it. Only fragile when you treat it as external. Only fragile when you believe it must be created instead of allowed. Shift your consciousness. The truth is simple. Flow is your natural state. You are already wired for it. You only need to stop leaving it. That's the key. Integration begins with breath. Notice your inhale. Notice your exhale. Notice how your body softens when attention rests there. Breath anchors you in the present. Breath signals to your nervous system. All is well. You are safe. You may relax. Shift your consciousness. Next, practice pauses. Pause before reacting. Pause before speaking. Pause before deciding. Even a 2-second pause rewires your nervous system toward alignment. It stops the knee-jerk reactions born of struggle. It expands perception. It allows intuition to guide action. Embody the state you desire. Flow also requires internal permission. Permission to rest. Permission to receive. Permission to act without force. You do not need external validation. You do not need outcomes to be perfect. You do not need constant effort to justify your existence. Shift your consciousness. Each time you grant yourself permission, you strengthen the habit of flow. Each time you stop arguing with now, you stabilize your frequency. Each time you pause, breathe, and allow, you expand the field of alignment around you. That is how flow becomes daily, not occasional. Remember, flow is not about doing more. Flow is about being more. Being calm. Being present. Being aligned. Flow is subtle. Flow is quiet. Flow is power that does not announce itself, but changes everything. Shift your consciousness. Repetition reinforces reality. Say it again. Flow is not something you enter. It is something you stop leaving. Flow is not something you enter. It is something you stop leaving. Flow is not something you enter. It is something you stop leaving. Anchor it in your body. Let it inform your interactions. Let it inform your work. Let it inform your thinking. Let it inform your rest. Flow is holistic. Flow is constant. Flow is a lifestyle, not a moment. Look back at the journey you've taken in this audiobook. You stopped forcing outcomes. You released struggle consciousness. You softened into flow. You let go of timing. You stabilized emotionally. You allowed the present moment. You detached from identity-based effort. You aligned with your future self. You noticed life moving toward you. All of these steps lead here, living in flow daily. This is not aspiration. This is embodiment. Your nervous system remembers it. Your mind learns it. Your body becomes it. Shift your consciousness. Now the final invitation. Move through today as the person who expects ease. Move through today as the one who allows now to be enough. Move through today as the one who notices life moving toward them. Move through today as the one who no longer leaves flow. Flow is here. Flow is present. Flow is natural. It is your state. Flow is not something you enter. It is something you stop leaving. Say it again. Feel it. Live it. And let your life prove that alignment was never a goal. It was always your birthright. You are aligned. You are in flow. You are enough. Shift your consciousness and never leave this state again. The audiobook ends, but your practice begins. In closing, you have reached the end of forcing, not because you tried harder, not because you learned more, but because you finally stopped arguing with life. Flow was never missing. It was waiting for your nervous system to feel safe enough to receive it. From this moment forward, your work is simple. Notice tension and soften. Notice urgency and slow down. Notice force and choose allowance. Do not rush to apply this. Live it. Let it prove itself to you. And here is your challenge. For the next 7 days, stop pushing outcomes. Breathe before acting. Pause before reacting. And silently repeat, I allow life to meet me. Because when you stop forcing the river, you remember you were always meant to float. Stay in flow.